Arizona gives you millions of acres of wide-open desert, but the moment your drone leaves the dirt, you enter a dense digital grid, where your altitude, location, and hardware are continuously tracked against a massive database of 2026 airspace restrictions. The legal map here is split in two. The Federal Aviation Administration holds strict authority over the navigable sky above you, while state municipalities heavily police the physical ground you launch from. This friction catches three distinct types of flyers: the casual hobbyist visiting on vacation, the commercial operator trying to map real estate, and the local homeowner who is frustrated by cameras hovering over their backyard. The margins for error are thin. Drifting a few hundred feet in the wrong direction near the wrong facility escalates an innocent flight from a standard warning into a state felony. Modern drone use has moved past casual off-the-grid flying. Operating in 2026 requires the same logistical preparation and situational awareness as piloting manned aircraft. Every flight plan begins by crossing a strict legal threshold. You have to clearly define whether your flight is recreational or commercial, because rules diverge instantly. This pilot protocols matrix breaks it down. On the left is the recreational path. You take the free FAA trust test online. It clears you for personal enjoyment, but limits you to visual line-of-sight flying and zero business utility. You can't even trade a photo for a cup of coffee. The right column shows the commercial standard, the Part 107 certificate. You have to study for and pass an in-person aeronautical exam, but it permits night operations and flights over people without specific waivers. These expanded operations come with a heavy load. Part 107 pilots deal with recurring testing and carry a much higher degree of legal liability if an operation goes wrong. Regardless of which certificate you hold, the hardware rules are identical. If your drone weighs more than 0.55 pounds, it must broadcast Remote ID. Remote ID operates as a digital, publicly readable license plate. It strips away pilot anonymity entirely. Law enforcement can see the exact location of your drone in the sky, and they get the real-time GPS coordinates of where you are standing with the controller. Remote ID means anonymity in the sky has effectively vanished. In 2026, digital compliance and continuous tracking are the baseline prices of admission in Arizona. Federal certification doesn't grant you blanket access to the map. The physical environment is layered with invisible, state-enforced hazard zones. Look at this restriction map. Pending 2026 legislation creates a strict 1-mile no-fly buffer around any ticketed event with a capacity of 1,000 people or more. The map is also dynamic. If a fire truck or police cruiser arrives in your visual vicinity with lights flashing, you have an immediate legal obligation to ground your drone. Interfering with emergency services is a Class 1 misdemeanor. But the highest risk spatial traps in the entire state are critical infrastructure boundaries. This protection layer covers power plants, dams, petroleum refineries, and telecom towers. Intentionally loitering over or photographing these specific facilities crosses into severe criminal territory. It is a Class 6 felony in Arizona, carrying up to 2 years in prison. Relying on your eyes isn't enough. You must use real-time FAA-approved apps like Aloft or Before You Fly to pre-scout the airspace and verify these boundaries before you start your propellers. Spatial ignorance is not a legal defense. Flying blindly infrastructure transforms a weekend hobby into a high-level crime. Federal rules govern the sky, but the moment you touch the dirt, you enter Arizona's legal ground war over takeoff and landing zones. State law explicitly prevents cities from writing their own airspace rules. However, cities retain total authority to dictate what you can do while standing on municipal property. This creates severe local restrictions. In Maricopa County and the city of Phoenix, taking off or landing in almost all public parks is prohibited, forcing you to find designated RC-friendly fields. If you plan to hike with your drone, know that recreational operations are prohibited within the physical borders of all Arizona state parks. There is an operational workaround. You can physically stand on adjacent non-park land to launch your drone and fly laterally into the airspace above the park, provided you maintain a direct visual line of sight. This split jurisdiction also answers the homeowner dispute. The FAA legally protects the navigable airspace directly above private homes. Neighbors cannot shoot down your drone, but you cannot launch from or landing on their private property without consent. And if you use that federal airspace to deliberately hover and photograph a resident, you cross into state harassment and privacy violations. Mastering Arizona drone law requires separating where the drone flies, which is a federal right, from where the pilot physically stands, which is a state restriction. Operating a drone legally requires intense preparation. You have to weigh that logistical effort against the footage you actually want to capture. If you are flying for business, the return on investment is clear. You invest heavy upfront effort to secure a Part 107 license and master link authorization apps. In exchange, this compliance path yields legally protected access across the state. If you are flying strictly for fun, you pass the trust test, verify your remote ID is broadcasting, and seek out designated RC parks or wide-open rural land where urban restrictions fall away. But if you are unwilling to use airspace checking apps, or you're just looking to grab quick social media clips over crowded concerts and state parks, you should leave your drone at home. By 2026, digital verification of remote ID signals makes it nearly impossible to fly a drone without a broadcasted identity being recorded and verified. Arizona presents some of the most diverse landscapes in the country for flight, but accessing them requires respecting the digital grid, following the protocols, and treating your drone as a fully regulated aircraft.